The Last Paradiso is an incredible movie thanks to its magical narrative and stunning images. It elegantly blends romance, lies, betrayals, and murder to create an engaging tale that grips audiences in a wave of emotion. The film captures the charming atmosphere of an Italian city in that period with its beautiful cinematography, which uses brightly painted locations and calm settings to make an indelible impression. The story is about a passionate love affair between two people who defy societal norms in order to find comfort and pleasure in one another's embrace. Sixio, a passionate and persistent farmer, becomes the driving force behind change in his small town. He has demonstrated to be a diligent and tenacious person who genuinely cares about his family, the community, and workers' rights. The film opens with a heartwarming scenario in which Paradiso and his mistress Bianca Schettino are having a blast. When they imagine a world free from their current circumstances, he is carrying her on his shoulders while they share wonderful memories. They openly declare their love for one another. But Bianca's sister Maria abruptly calls off the intimate date and urges her to get back home right away to prevent being found out. Sixio, who is a parent with his spouse and son, is not permitted to go with Bianca. There is a close link between him and Bianca, despite the fact that he is married. The complexities of Sixio's life are revealed to us in the scenario that follows. As the camera pans, we witness his wife Lucia reprimanding their son Rocco, while she stands upright and wears a serious expression. She leads the small kid to his grandmother's home with a resolute step, taking him by the hand. While everything is going on, Sixio's devoted sister Linda, who stays in the same household, runs into him outdoors. During this conversation, Linda brings up her brother's illicit relationship with Bianca, which he has been keeping hidden. Linda gathers the nerve to challenge him. She begs him to break up with her, with a mixture of sincere worry and sisterly tenderness, stressing the dangers that await should their secret relationship be discovered. Her warnings resound through the air as she urgently tries to reach Sixio and prevent a catastrophe that would ruin their family's peace. He is completely unaware of the underlying dangers hiding in the shadows, due to his unflinching faith in the strength and enormity of his feelings. His heart is entwined in the seduction of forbidden love, impairing his judgment and concealing the reason that his sister is urgently trying to instill in him. He strongly asserts that his love, however, overrides any threats or cautions, and disregards her advice. Later, we depict Bianca and Maria meeting their father, a wealthy businessman named Cumba. Cumba established an olive garden and hired numerous young workers owing to his financial savvy. Maria cautions Bianca about her illicit relationship with Sixio as they head towards their father. Once they reach their destination, both of them deliver the workers their lunch during the break. A hardworking young girl needs a break from the scorching heat. She feels exhausted. Taking advantage of the chance, Cumba offers her a respite and asks her to go with him to the barn, where she can take refuge from the harsh sun. Once they are alone, Cumba approaches her and begins to touch her inappropriately. Despite her firm refusal and determined efforts to resist, the man, fueled by his strength and authority, ultimately carries out the despicable act, causing the unfortunate girl to scream in distress. Maria hears everything and is horrified by her father's behavior, hesitating to go inside the barn. She decides to leave the area since she is emotionally overpowered. Sixio visits Vincenzo's house later in the evening. When he arrives, he runs into his wife and asks where her spouse is. She lets him know that her husband is still in town and will probably be coming home shortly. Sixio asks her nicely to have a cup of coffee. She approaches him with a firm expression as Sixio sips his coffee and begins to complain that he's influencing her husband in dangerous ways. They are, she claims, very aware of the consequences that those opposed to the mayor face. Expressing her concerns, Maria stresses that she doesn't want to raise her daughters alone and wishes for her husband to remain alive and by her side, as he is the pillar of their family. She is asking Sixio to refrain from pushing her husband into dangerous situations. In response, Sixio gazes at her silently for a few moments, nodding his head in agreement with her plea. The city's men gather in the local tavern as evening falls, to relax and enjoy themselves. A notorious businessman of this town, renowned for his selfishness and exploitative business practices, is present within the group. At this point, one of his workers comes up to him and demands payment for the full year that he has been working on the land. The going rate is too low for the poor man, therefore his only option is to strike and demand an increased salary. His need for extra income is urgent and undeniable, given that he's got 2 children to raise. The employer flatly dismisses the worker's claim as a convenient excuse for declining to pay additional compensation, blaming taxes that should have been borne by the government. With a confident address to the audience, Sixio surprises them with an unexpected announcement. He intends to buy their olives for a fair price. Given that the group hadn't anticipated such an offer, their reaction is a mixture of surprise and disbelief. But Don Luigi, a prominent businessman, feels a surge of anger in the midst of the commotion and decides to withdraw from the gathering, unhappy with the sudden turn of events. Sixio takes advantage of this opportunity to lighten up the atmosphere and improve everybody's spirits while Don Luigi is gone. Inciting shouts of celebration and excitement from the crowd, he announces his next batch of drinks will be on him. They are raising their glasses and shouting in unison as they forget their worries, thanking Sixio for his generous gesture. When the crowd is bonded by shared stories and experiences, laughter fills the air. They are singing songs together, their voices blending perfectly with the clinking of glasses. Each toast is a symbol of friendship and mutual hope for the future. The following morning, as Sixio enters his home, his family has gathered for their meals. A somber quiet permeates the room as he walks in. Sixio decides that he will tell his family the entire story, since he is tired of keeping it hidden from them. He passionately explains how workers have been exposed to unjust treatment and poor earnings, in an effort to desperately elicit empathy and understanding among his family members. Sixio feels his fury rising inside him as he pours out his emotions, and confesses his tiredness at trying to aid workers who are frequently taken advantage of by influential people in the town. He longs for change so that people would recognize the suffering of the underprivileged and confront injustice. The remarks, however, are lost to deaf ears, as his father diminishes his concerns. Sixio finds his father's attitude disappointing, since he was hoping for encouragement and support. He is instead given a firm reprimand and advised to walk cautiously and stay away from powerful individuals. Sixio's heart sinks more at the implication of possible consequences. His father, prioritizing self-preservation, tells him to keep to himself and not to confront people in positions of authority. Sixio acknowledges with a sad heart that he will need to find another strategy for pursuing justice without putting his family or himself in danger. Sixio's wife Lucia raises her voice and joins the din of displeased voices in the entire space. She warns her husband once more, stating how extremely irritating she finds it that he keeps disappearing, even in the early hours of the morning. As she accuses him of abandoning her with other women, her annoyance reaches an all-time high. Each family member is acutely aware of the gravity of the situation, as the mood in the room becomes increasingly tense. Sixio is unable to provide any justifications, while being conscious of the seriousness of his actions. He gets up from his seat, humbly accepting the truth, and walks out of the room, leaving a noticeable discomfort in his wake. In the subsequent scene, Sixio cannot help but feel his heart flutter with excitement as he approaches his and Bianca's meeting place. He grips a tiny box firmly in his palm as the sun spreads a warm warmth across the trees. When he finally gets to their agreed-upon meeting spot, there she is, Bianca, his beloved, looking as beautiful as ever. He does not waste any time in giving her a music player that some foreigners during the war left in their little town. When Bianca sees it, her smile grows. She admires the music player's gorgeous appearance, as she holds it in her arms with a careful touch. It serves as a connection to a world beyond their own, and is a remnant from earlier times. Sixio gently presses the needle while attaching a record to the machine. There is a crackling sound all around. They are surrounded by the dulcet tones of French tunes, which take them to another time and place in their imaginations. Bianca rests on the floor next to Sixio as the music plays, and their imaginations run wild. They desire to cruise the streets of Paris, hands entwined, taking in the famed architecture and the scent of freshly baked croissants. The music player's appealing tones serve as a continual reminder that everything is possible, despite the distance of their ambitions. They have set goals and developed specific action plans as they prepare to travel to Paris. The music fills the space and sends them all whirling and gracefully dancing together. When the album's final song starts, they instinctively reach out and take each other's hands. Their fingers clasp together. They give one another a deep kiss at that vulnerable time, savoring the warmth of their bond. Afterwards, we witness Don Luigi and Kumba talking to each other. Don Luigi, whose face is contorted with wrath, walks back and forth across the room, demonstrating his irritation at Sixio's continuous interference in his business matters. Luigi can no longer tolerate the wicked Paradiso ruining his business. Recognizing Don Luigi's anguish, Kumba offers his assistance, and ensures that he reaches Sixio in pursuit of a solution. Kumba is agitated, anxious and resolute to put an end to Sixio's interference, as Don Luigi leaves with a heavy sigh. Sixio is on his way home when he unintentionally runs into Vince on the road. The tension in the air makes Vince's anxiety visible. As Bianca's elder brother walks by and interrupts their talk, his harsh look falls onto Sixio like a warning. Vince doesn't spare any time for conveying his feelings of worry as he senses the weight of oncoming danger. He genuinely advises Sixio to break off his relationship with Bianca, and urgency resonates in his words. Vince emphasizes that Kumba, Bianca's father, is notorious for his brutal personality, and should never learn who his daughter's partner is. Sixio, ever stubborn, does not appear to be alarmed by the impending danger. He assures Vince there is nothing to worry about, with a fixed stare and a firm tone in his voice. He is adamant that no matter what comes their way, their love will last. As Sixio wanders through the streets in the late hours, he unintentionally runs into a man. To his amazement, the man offers an invitation, one to the illustrious Schettino house. Sixio is intrigued and wonders for a while about the purpose of this offer and what may be there in store for him, especially since Kumba, the one who issued the invitation, demonstrated willingness to speak with him. Sixio chooses to accept the offer and makes his way to the meeting. Although feeling curious and slightly self-assured, he is cordially welcomed by Bianca's brother, who swiftly escorts him inside, where their father is waiting. Kumba politely invites Sixio to have a seat, and then Bianca herself walks in and eloquently pours them glasses of wine. A momentary recognition occurs when their eyes lock, but they both make an attempt to hide it. It soon becomes unambiguous to Sixio that this gathering's purpose has nothing to do with his relationship with Bianca. Kumba desires to talk about how Don Luigi's business has fallen short, and expresses his worry about Sixio's meddling, alerting him of the possible serious losses it could incur. Sixio, though, is unwavering in his beliefs. He is enraged but assertive, and he is adamant that the diligent farmers ought to be paid more for their olives. Sixio makes a commitment to pursue fair wages, along with other honorable workers. Kumba understands that Sixio's decision is based upon a genuine desire for justice, and shows respect to his firm conviction. They shake hands to indicate their agreement with one another's divergent point of view. Sixio steps out of the Schettino house with pride after saying goodbye. On his way back to his house as the night draws on, Don Luigi encounters difficulty. Two guys stop his car, and one of them is the farmer who received a pitiful pay from him, and is out for vengeance. He is brutally beaten as they drag him out of the car and into the road with a firm purpose. They issue a harsh warning, demanding that he stop being disrespectful to farmers, and treat them with dignity. They eventually leave him there, the effects of their rage still visible. Next, the townswomen head to the river at the crack of dawn to do their home duties and wash their clothing. Meanwhile, Sixio and his companion are examining the land and deliberating on the best method for planting. Bianca tirelessly strives to keep her home tidy in the other part of the town. Don Luigi, who is still recovering from his injuries, makes his way to the police station to file a complaint about the sense of dread he encountered the previous evening. He implores the authorities to immediately get into action right away, seeks justice, and demands that the perpetrators be identified. The police agree to go after the person who plotted the assault, but they don't appear to be in a hurry. Later at night, Sixio boldly steps outside in the pitch black to visit his beloved Bianca, who has captured his heart. He is determined to be at her side, and not even a massive 10-meter wall can stand in his way. He discreetly approaches her window after gracefully scaling the enormous building, taking care not to wake her from her sound sleep. A mixture of happiness and astonishment can be seen on Bianca's face as he approaches her bedside, but it soon turns into nervousness. She chastises Sixio for taking such a risk, and warns him of the potential repercussions if they are found out. They cannot afford to stay in her room any longer, since their safety has been endangered. The committed pair descend to the adjoining barn in search of comfort and safety. In the ensuing scene, we depict them tucked away among a fragrant hay pile, inside the rustic boundaries of the barn. Their ardent kisses, which express the depth of their love, fill the air with an overpowering passion. They consummate their desires in a union of bodies and souls, securing their deep connection with a passionate act of love. Sixio promises Bianca at this tender moment that he will break all links with his family, quitting their unhappy existence, and setting out on a journey away from this abandoned land they call home. Bianca flees the barn quickly after their intense encounter, to avoid being spotted. Sixio is still deep asleep in the barn when dawn rises, resting peacefully. Meanwhile, Bianca is immersed in the kitchen, painstakingly putting together breakfast for her family. And as she is busy washing the dishes, she joyfully tells her sister Maria about Sixio's unforeseen visit, and how they ended up staying the night in the barn. Bianca reveals that she left Sixio behind when she set out early in the morning, when Maria asks curiously about his whereabouts. After they finish eating, Kumba mentions that one of his horses is lame, and asks Cosimo to reshoe it. Following his meal, Cosimo walks over to the hay barn. Bianca and Maria both have a panic attack after realizing that Cosimo's presence there will expose Sixio. Maria declares her intention to go with her brother without thinking twice, seeking to keep Sixio's presence under wraps. They hastily move to the barn, where Maria just manages to eject Sixio before he is found asleep. Shortly before they are about to part ways, Sixio gives Maria a genuine hug of gratitude, and thanks her for all of her help. Subsequently, once Sixio goes back to his family, he discovers that his son is waiting for him at the church. When Sixio's mother Lucia requests him to venture outside, his wife starts lecturing him once more. She admits that she was quite worried, since their child had fled the house the night before, in search of his father. She puts the burden firmly on Sixio, and wonders how much longer the family will be neglected. Despite her annoyance, Sixio maintains his composure and declares his love for Lucia, while noting their very different outlooks on life. He strives to reassure her of his affection by gently cupping her face in his hands, as he draws her close and embraces her securely. In the subsequent scene, the lovers meet in a faraway place, while drenched in warm sunlight. Joyously running in front, Sixio keeps close behind Bianca as she does so. As they reach their destination, their enjoyment is unmistakable. Sixio has a fleeting concern for Bianca's safety as she stands on the wall of an ancient building. He faces his fear and climbs the wall with her. Their hearts are overflowing with anticipation as they discuss dreams of a future together. Sixio emphasizes his steadfast commitment to leaving his family behind and spending all of his life with Bianca by informing her that they will be leaving in just 3 days. He asserts that his brother Antonio, who has a house in the city, will be happy to greet them. Little do they know that this is going to be their last meeting. Cosimo surreptitiously follows the couple's every step while listening in on their chat. He immediately reports to his father what he has seen, after becoming completely incensed. Kumba becomes enraged due to his anger and bangs the chair before shouting for Maria. He questions her about the whereabouts of her sister in an urgent manner. Maria responds by making up a falsehood and saying that her sister just left for the store. Bianca arrives back soon after, and her father promptly begins questioning her about her prior absence. Bianca verifies that she actually did go to the store and make a grocery purchase. Kumba, however, unleashes an outpouring of abhorrent remarks on her, since his nastiness knows no boundaries. He calls the older sister a disgusting girl unworthy of carrying his name, while condemning the younger sister as a persistent liar. The severity of her father's verbal overwhelms Bianca, who makes a snap decision. She starts to take her, which prompts Kumba to swiftly move his gaze away from her, while Cosimo leaves the room. Whilst crying and sobbing in agony, Bianca wonders aloud if she is any different from the other unlucky females her father has. In the middle of the chaos, Maria instinctively protects her sister by preventing further harm. Kumba immediately ends the conversation, essentially ending the confrontation, since he is outraged with the turn of events. The two sisters exit the room, leaving behind emotional scars that are heavy on their hearts as they do so. Following that, Sixio struggles to fall asleep late at night. He comes to terms with the fact that he will not be seeing his family in the morning, since he intends to depart with Bianca. He is immersed in thought as he wanders around his home, gazing distantly at his family, who are asleep. He moves closer to his wife and kid and, mindful that it may be his last moment with them, leans in to tenderly kiss them. The ensuing day arrives, and Kumba calls Sixio once more. They agree to meet, each with their beloved horses, seeing a chance to talk about the land situation. When Sixio delivers Kumba a letter, he intends to read it aloud, but when Kumba starts talking to him, Sixio's focus is swiftly distracted. Unbeknownst to Sixio, a diabolical plan is coming together in front of him. As soon as Kumba notices Sixio crouching to the ground, he seizes the moment to make a move. He uses a shovel to strike Sixio repeatedly with strong blows. Kumba continues to hit Sixio unrelentingly until the latter ceases breathing, his onslaught ferocity leaving no space for pity. With each strike, Kumba experiences a mixture of rage and resolve, brought on by the betrayal of Sixio's illicit relationship with his own. Arriving on a horse, Sixio's lifeless body is brought into the center of the town. The Paradiso family is taken aback by what they see. Vincenzo cradles Lucia tightly as she screams heartbreakingly, unable to conceal her grief over her husband's passing. As soon as Sixio's mother and sister arrive at the scene shortly after, the sight is so terrifying that Sixio's mother drops to the ground in agony. The town hears about this awful tragedy fast, and the people there are frightened by the horrible turn of events. In the middle of the disarray, the heartbroken Bianca knows immediately that it is her own father who is responsible for taking her lover away. She throws rocks at the front door of their home while yelling and sobbing, aiming all of her sorrow and resentment at her father, and blaming him for the irreparable loss. While everything is happening, Maria stands in a corner of their home, sobbing quietly, as she is appalled by her sister's precarious situation. As she screams more, Bianca shouts louder, declaring that Kumba is no longer her father and is thus unworthy of that title. Kumba, on the other hand, refrains from stepping from his position in his office, while he silently observes her tantrums. They carry Sixio's lifeless body with the greatest of dignity. His father gently wipes away the bloody remnants as he cleans them away, his heart laden with sadness. He fights to understand the harsh truth in front of him as the tears roll down his cheeks. Antonio, Sixio's brother, learns the heartbreaking news while he is at work in a faraway part of the world. The shock and grief grab him tightly, despite the considerable time they had been apart. His fiancée recognizes his deep distress and makes an effort to comfort him and ease his suffering. Having made up his mind to go back home, Antonio tells his fiancée that he will only be gone for a few days, and starts packing his things. Next, Antonio is welcomed to a barren motherland when he arrives. Tears welling up in their eyes, his mother and sister run to give him a firm embrace. The tragedy overwhelms him, and his sister begs him to not give up until the person responsible for their brother's murder is found and brought to justice. As the day of Sixio's funeral approaches, a somber mood permeates the town. As the procession makes its way through the solemn streets toward the cemetery, faces are flooded with sadness. Bianca sneaks into the funeral over her family's prohibition, since she cannot handle the intense agony. Despite being extremely saddened by the loss, she is hesitant to approach the distraught family, and instead chooses to watch the procession from a distance, as tears run down her cheeks. After the funeral ceremony, Antonio wastes no time and immediately heads to the police station. He is determined to find out who the culprit is. Upon inquiry, the police officer informs him that Kumba is not among the suspects, despite the entire town being convinced of his guilt. The officer promises to inform Antonio if they come across any relevant information, in an apparent attempt to conclude the conversation and dismiss Antonio. As Antonio walks out of the police station, he is unexpectedly approached by Vince. Clearly agitated, Vince is trying to calm down an angry man, while simultaneously venting his frustration to Antonio. He complains about his brother being unjustly incarcerated, along with 30 other men, all due to Sixio's suspicious murder. Vincenzo goes on to explain that Kumba holds significant influence over the police force, which is why they only suspect individuals who harbored resentment towards Sixio for his business dealings. However, Vincenzo assures Antonio that he knows Sixio's true feelings, that he genuinely loved only Bianca, and had intentions of leaving with her. The subsequent scene finds Antonio confronting his father at home, in an effort to get the truth about the allegations surrounding his deceased sibling. He listens intently as his father corroborates everyone's assumptions. His father admits, with tremendous grief in his voice, that Sixio had always been on the edge, living recklessly, and had eventually paid the price for his irresponsibility. He regrets Sixio's clash with Kumba, well aware that Kumba's enormous might makes it impossible to achieve justice. As they come to terms with the futility of their predicament, hopelessness permeates the air. Antonio's father begs him to put the matter aside and go back to his house. But notwithstanding his father's warnings, Antonio stubbornly draws forward to the Schettino's house. Each stride he takes is brimming with resolve, as he walks with a feeling of purpose. When Cosimo spots Antonio from afar, he locks Bianca in her room right away. Her voice reverberates throughout the house, as she cries out in desperation to be released. Having full knowledge of Antonio's plans, Cosimo rushes outside to confront him. Cosimo responds to Antonio's request for a discussion with Kumba by telling him that his father is currently asleep, and the Paradiso family is not welcome in their house. Unfazed, Antonio insists on meeting Kumba, stressing that everyone in the village is aware of the truth of his brother's passing. Just thereafter, Kumba leaves the house without displaying any signs of guilt. He denies Antonio's request, claiming Sixio had his just desserts. He also explicitly states that Antonio's family is not welcome anymore. Undeterred, Antonio asserts with confidence that Kumba's perspective of power is erroneous, and that he will finally pay for his greed. Before threatening Antonio, Kumba tells him to offer his salutations to his father, in a scary tone. He slams the door shut, thus excluding Antonio. It is now time for Antonio to return to the city, following the events that occurred. His family bids him farewell, while breaking down in tears due to their overwhelming emotions. Before departing, Antonio hugs each member of the family warmly. He then travels with Vincenzo till dusk, when he eventually says his own goodbye, and Antonio takes his seat. The passing scenery brings back pleasant memories of Antonio's carefree youth with his brother, as the bus continues on its journey. The images bring back a lot of amusing and joyful recollections of their time together. On the next day, oblivious of the looming peril, Kumba walks into his barn to check on his horses. Abruptly, he is struck violently with a shovel, which throws him off balance and causes him to tumble. He learns to his awe that the attacker is none other than Antonio. Eventually, Kumba shares Sixio's destiny, in a terrible turn of events. Once Cosimo gets there among the chaos, he discovers his father lying in a pool of his own blood. Before he is able to react, Antonio lashes out at Cosimo, repeatedly hitting him viciously. When Antonio realizes that justice and retribution have been served, he takes comfort in that understanding. Later, Cosimo and Kumba's clothes mysteriously reappear in the town center. When Sixio's father and Lucia show up, they both recognize that Sixio has been vindicated. Sixio's father angrily refuses to allow the police to take Lucia as a suspect, as they come and make an attempt to do so. Instead, he forcefully grasps her hand as they quickly leave. Subsequently, when Maria gets to the barn, she finds her brother's and father's lifeless bodies. She screams out in utter horror, calling out for Bianca with a blood-curdling scream. Suddenly roused from her sleep, Bianca runs to her sister's aid. She comes face to face with their father, devoid of life there, a horrible sight. Maria breaks the news to Bianca that Cosimo has also perished, with tears running down her cheeks. The two sisters are now abandoned in their bereaved world. The locals learn that the sisters are the ones to blame, once Kumba lost his life and his once dominant rule is overthrown. They all decide to shun the siblings in response. Their humiliation is always brought to memory by the disdainful looks that are thrown at them. Even the local seller, who formerly sold them food, has stopped providing it to them. Bianca finds herself obliged to steal bread out of sheer desperation, in order to survive. When workers abandon the farm, the sisters' already difficult living becomes much more challenging, and their formerly prosperous olive business completely crumbles down. To make matters worse, Bianca and Maria realize that they are not welcomed even in the holy place of the church, lacking consolation at their most trying times. Given her dire circumstances and the closed doors in her path, Bianca seeks Don Luigi for assistance. She believes that he might be able to help her and convince the workers to return and support their falling business. After giving it some thought and taking advantage of her desperate situation, Don Luigi agrees to aid her. He is willing to do this, though, on one condition. Curious about his request, Bianca questions him. As soon as he begins stroking her face and yanking at her clothing, however, things take a sinister turn. Because she is so terrified, Bianca fights against the evil traitor as he pushes her closer. Bianca defends herself by stabbing him in the leg with a knife, allowing her to flee. Antonio goes back to work in the meanwhile, but his thoughts are still on what happened in his homeland. He gets distracted by his thoughts and accidentally hurts his co-worker, causing him to collapse to the ground, wailing in agony. Antonio remains standing, unable to comprehend what has transpired. Next, we witness Bianca's disconnection from reality. Spending her days in the same spots where they used to meet, she starts to picture seeing Sixio. Her mind is filled with images of a happy bunch as she recalls their first meeting, their shared dreams, and the enjoyable times she had with her sister and Vincenzo. In the ensuing scene, we find Antonio on the brink of his upcoming wedding, yet there is no sign of joy in his demeanor. His fiancée joyfully informs him that her father is giving them an apartment, where they can reside happily ever after. Antonio, though, shows little reaction, and does not seem to care about the news. Instead, he chooses to send a letter to Bianca, but upon receiving it, she hesitates to open it. Determined in his decision, Antonio leaves a farewell note for his fiancée. The abandoned girl reads the letter, sobbing, unable to accept the fact that Antonio has left her so soon before their wedding. Antonio, having given up his job, gathers his belongings and heads back to his family's house, reuniting with them and bringing them happiness, especially in light of Sixio's passing. Later on, Antonio visits the Schettino house, where he is welcomed by Maria. She extends him an invitation to enter and offers him a seat. Antonio's focus is abruptly brought to a picture of a young woman. Curiosity piqued, he asks Maria about it. With a somber tone, Maria reveals that the woman in the picture is her mother, who passed many years ago. Maria graciously offers Antonio tea, before rushing out to look for her sister Bianca. However, when they get back, Antonio is nowhere to be found. Antonio experiences a sense of familiarity upon seeing the photograph of the woman, as if he had seen her in his childhood. In the subsequent scene, he goes in search of his father and asks about Schettino's wife in the picture, recalling that the same photo was once in his father's wallet. Reminiscing about the past, Antonio's father admits that Maria is his daughter. He explains that their families were close, and he had even been the best man at Cumba's wedding. They were close friends until before Bianca was born, but Cumba was harsh to his wife afterward, wishing for a boy and abusing her ceaselessly. The woman, desperate to escape Cumba's harshness, took comfort at Antonio's family home. It was during these troubled times that their love blossomed, which ultimately led to the birth of Maria. With tears in his eyes, Antonio's father confesses that he never had the guts to tell Maria this reality. Antonio listens intently to his father, while remaining silent and showing understanding. Antonio bids his father farewell, and walks peacefully away without uttering a word. However, his father also states that Cesarina committed as a result of those incidents. Bianca stares at the letter in her room after hearing of Antonio's return, debating whether or not to read it. She musters the courage to open it ultimately. The letter's content reflects Antonio's desire for a conversation to discuss a serious topic. Bianca runs up to Antonio as he walks through the town center and enthusiastically asks about the matter. She is taken aback by their encounter. Given how much Antonio now resembles Sixio, Bianca is overcome with feelings. Antonio says that he wants to marry her as they become closer. Bianca is initially shocked, until becoming overwhelmed with relief. She agrees as Antonio demands her to shut her eyes. The heavenly dance of white blossoms falling upon her, a symbol of purity and new beginnings, is what Bianca witnesses when her eyes finally open slowly in the film's final sequence. She marvels at the magical moment, her excitement heightened by the magnificent red dress she is wearing. An outstanding smile sweeps over her face. Awe and affection fill Antonio's eyes as he stands next to her. Shortly after, everyone in the town joins them in celebrating their wedding, including his father, their entire family, and Maria. Antonio's father approaches Bianca and grabs her delicate hand in his own with excitement. Towards the church, they move. The steps Antonio takes after them echo with knowledge and earnestness. The journey of Sixio in the film exemplifies how love can inspire people to confront injustice and struggle for a brighter future for both themselves and their community.